Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. If you believe that billionaires should pay more in taxes to help the rest of us, well, you're going to love the news from California. California's billionaire tax has the signatures to make the ballot, backers say. Supporters of the measure say they've accumulated more than 1.5 million signatures, topping the 875,000 required. The initiative has been embraced by several unions and promoted by Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders.
The billionaire class cannot have it all. This nation belongs to all of us, not just a handful of billionaires.
Here is how the California ballot initiative, if passed in November, would work. California residents worth more than $1 billion would be taxed 5% on all of their assets. It would be a one-time tax, not annual, so those with $20 billion in assets would face a one-time billion-dollar tax. The tax revenues would be used for healthcare, food aid, and education programs.
Supporters say the policy could generate billions of dollars and make up for an anticipated budget shortfall in the California healthcare system.
That shortfall in California, like shortfalls in all the other states, are because the 2025 tax and spending bill passed by the Republican Congress and signed by President Trump, the big beautiful bill as they called it, slashed Medicaid. And the cuts are scheduled to begin soon after the November midterm elections. Nearly every U.S. state has projected that hospitals and medical centers will close, healthcare jobs will be lost, residents will be sicker, and insurance premiums will skyrocket unless funding gaps are filled. In California, the billionaires who hold the illusion that their fortunes were entirely of their own making are now freaking out. They insist the Medicaid funding gap is not the billionaires' problems. And the oligarchs are threatening to bolt and pull their wealth out with them.
Peter Thiel, Larry Page, and other California billionaires threatening to leave the state over this possible billionaires tax, but they may be too late. And here's why. A ballot measure that could come up for vote in November would impose a wealth tax of 5% on California residents worth at least $1 billion. We know all that. But proponents say it would raise $100 billion to offset federal cuts for health care. To ensure that billionaires don't rush for the exits, the tax would actually be retroactive to January 1st, 2026. So
that means in order to avoid paying the tax, the billionaires would have had to have left last year in 2025. And under existing California laws, in order to avoid paying state taxes, you have to do far more than just pick up and go.
You have to have moved your home, your doctors, your bank accounts, your pets, your family photos, your cars, even your country clubs have to have moved. It also helps if you move your business. So doing all of that in the final weeks of 2025 would have been difficult.
Translation: to all of the California billionaires threatening to leave now or in the future, I love that clip of televangelist Kenneth Copeland. Anyway, back to the billionaire tax. Peter Thiel and other billionaires are already spending millions of dollars on advertisements and campaigns to try and defeat the ballot initiative. The billionaires have even organized, or perhaps paid for, a public rally against the tax.
Over the weekend, dozens in San Francisco took part in a march for billionaires, voicing opposition, saying that the tax would lead to an exodus of wealth. The group held signs saying billionaires build your future and tip your landlord. A few dozen counter-protesters also showed up.
As the debate intensifies, it's important to point out that even if the measure is approved in November, the proposal could still get tied up in the courts. The billionaires are pledging lawsuits, and some legal analysts say the retroactive nature of the tax could be grounds to have it dismissed. Also, even if the initiative is passed and survives a court challenge, implementing the billionaire tax could still be complicated.
It's based upon assets and net worth, which normally are comprised of illiquid assets that you couldn't sell on the market. So it would be quite an administrative burden to impose and collect such a tax. It would be hard.
Even if it is difficult, I believe the tax should be implemented, and here's why. Despite the billionaires' hysteria and claims that California's prosperity would evaporate overnight or that Silicon Valley would suddenly become a ghost town, the fact is that the tax would not be annual, but rather a one-time imposition. It would be a fleeting inconvenience to people whose balance sheets resemble the GDP of small nations. The idea that billionaires, who have already demonstrated a supernatural tolerance for risk and volatility, would be undone by a single 5% trim is, to put it delicately, bullshit. Secondly, the revenue is not destined for bureaucratic indulgence. It would go instead to healthcare, education, and feeding the hungry, the pillars upon which any halfway civilized society rests. If you believe, as most of us do, that government exists to secure the general welfare, then this tax is not confiscation, it is good housekeeping. Finally, the moral argument we hear from conservatives is absurd. They insist they made their money all by themselves, and that taking any of their fortunes away would imperil the engine of progress. Never mind that billionaires have flourished thanks to a system of laws, courts, infrastructure, and public investment that they did not finance. The billionaires have driven on roads they did not pave, got an educated workforce from schools they did not endow, and have benefited from legal contracts in courts the billionaires did not build. To suggest that a billionaire owes society nothing special is sickening. Now, to be fair, it is possible that some of the wealth will move out of California and that the tax revenue the state does get will not usher in healthcare, rainbows, and unicorns. But the choice for California voters is not between perfection and ruin. It is between a state that asks something modest of its most fortunate citizens and one that asks nothing at all while public systems fall apart. In that context, the sensible verdict is obvious. Tax the billionaires, not because they are villains, nor because success is a crime, but because our society, if it is to have a civilized future, must stop mistaking wealth for wisdom and power for virtue. The billionaires under this tax will still be in great financial shape. Kudos to Californians for pushing forward with the message that the federal Medicaid cuts passed by Donald Trump and the GOP will now be funded by those who can afford to contribute to the shortfall, the wealthiest of the wealthy. It is about fundamental fairness, plain and simple. By the way, Donald Trump lashed out on 60 Minutes when asked about the manifesto of the White House Correspondents' Dinner gunman.
He appears to reference a motive in it. He writes this, quote, "Administration officials, they are targets." And he also wrote this, "I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes." What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people, horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me.
Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular is from Huber, who wrote, "A guilty conscience needs no accuser." Indeed. I look forward to reading your comments about some of the billionaires in California freaking out as a new billionaire tax is coming to the November ballots. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.